I'm Wolf. I'm with the Pro SDK team. I'm going to start out with the slides and the demos here. This is Tushar. He works in Core, and he's actually the father of the API classes that you're going to see today. So if you have any questions or enhancements requests, he's the guy to go to. So we're talking about integration with ArcGIS Online, from ArcGIS Pro to ArcGIS Online. And there's a set of classes that are used by the API for ArcGIS Online integration. And if you see this AGOL abbreviation in my slides, that's just a short for ArcGIS Online. So there's 4 classes I want to highlight here. We have ArcGIS Portal Manager class. We have the ArcGIS Portal class. We have EsriHttpClient. And we have a .NET class, that's the JSON.NET, which is a utility class we use. We're going to show and explain that a little bit later. The ArcGIS Pro and Portal integration using the SDK is pretty much used for retrieving content from ArcGIS Online. But as a first in this presentation today, you'll see how you can use the EsriHttpClient class to access non-ArcGIS Online services as well. And I think we can say REST services because that's what we are working with. So classes used by the API, the first one is the ArcGISPortalManager. It's used to manage the collection of portals that are defined within ArcGIS Pro. Each portal is defined using a ArcGIS Portal class, and the ArcGISPortalManager functionality mainly is there to manage the list of all portals that are known to ArcGIS Pro. You can add portals, you can remove portals from the portal list, and one portal can be configured and set as active. And we see that a little bit later. There's also a set of events that you can use those events to detect changes to the collection of portals. There is an active portal changed event that fires if the active portal has actually changed. We also have ArcGIS Portal added event that fires if a new portal was added to your list of collection of portals. We have ArcGIS Portal removed event that fires when a portal is removed, so pretty straightforward. And here we go, first demo. Let me bring up Visual Studio. So what I did here is in Visual Studio, I created a little project using our doc pane template. And if you're not familiar with the SDK and the templates that are available through the SDK, you can listen to our first session that we had yesterday. It's about the user interface, advanced user interfaces. It kind of steps you through how to create a doc pane from a template. So this is a very simple doc pane I created. You'll see it in a moment when I run the program. What we have on the top here is a Get Portal List button. This is what I use to retrieve the list of all portals. Then I have a list control beneath where I show the result of my portals. Then I look at the portal information, at the information I have on a selected portal. And then down here is a blank button. That's what I use later in my second demo. So let's get started here. I'm going to build this, rebuild. Always a good idea when you have a project is to rebuild it just in case that you deleted the files that are, the package files that are produced by your build, because Visual Studio will not detect that you deleted the actual package that's exported into the well-known folder for ArcGIS Pro. So rebuild will always do this. So you can see up here, on my startup screen on the top right, I already have my, my portal connection. That's my active portal. I'm currently signed in, and it shows my user ID. So let me just get started here with I guess I can just use a new project. So I go in, and the doc pane that I designed for this demo has a little button that initiates, brings up the doc pane in my doc pane area. So you can see on the right. Most of this behavior you see here is pretty much out of box. So I just added those elements, and like I said, you can see how this works. And if you look at the, I think all the sessions are recorded, so you can go to our website. Is it E365 or 380? Not quite sure what the numbers mean. 380 would be our street address, so maybe it's 380, 365, I don't know. Anyways, go to the site, and then you can view the pre-recorded videos. So if I click on the Get Portal list here, I set a breakpoint, and all I do is I go to ArcGIS Portal Manager, I select the current portal manager, and I call this method that gives me all portals, get portals. And it will retrieve, let's see in the next step. So when we look at this, this is a list of portals. So when I look at it, I have 3 elements right now, and they are all of the type ArcGIS portal. So in my list of portals, I have currently 3 portals. So all I do here is I display this property list of all portals within my user interface. And if I continue, we can see here's my 3 portal. I display the URL so you can identify which portal we are talking about. So that was the first demo. I'm just going to let that sit here because we're going to go right into the second demo from this same application. So the next class we're talking about is the ArcGIS Portal class. This provides the connection information for a specific portal. ArcGIS Portal is used to authenticate a connection to ArcGIS Online. So with ArcGIS Portal, we can get the sign-on username. We can sign in to ArcGIS Online or your portal, depending on what it's pointing to. You can also sign out, that feeds right into the next demo here. So let me go back to my application. So if I think I have to put ArcGIS Pro into the foreground. If I now select one of these portals, my Get Portal Info button lights up. I can now click on that. So here's a piece of code behind that gets executed. Again, if you're not familiar with these patterns, these are standard MVVM patterns that we use in ArcGIS Pro. So I have an iCommand property. When I click the button, this iCommand property is initiated, and we provide a class, a relay command class behind that implements iCommand, and it has 2 methods that I specified here as a lambda expression. That's all pretty complicated stuff, but it's standard C#, so you can read up on lambda expressions. In essence, what I have here is instead of specifying an external function, I just have an inline function using lambda. So when I click on this button, it will call the execute function that I specify here in reload command. And here's the very first line. So what I have here is I have a selected portal. That's the line that I highlighted in my list box. And I want to display the portal URL. That's the first line that I display. Then I display the sign-on username. That's another attribute of my ArcGIS Portal class. And then I show if the portal is active and if it's signed on. So let's continue with this. So now we can see in gray underneath a little information about the portal. The first is the URL. The sign-on name is my W. Kaiser. That's my ArcGIS Online sign-on name, my identity. And then it's active, so this is the active portal. I can also see this on the top here. If I use this pull down here, you can see the information should match what I have in my API. So I'm currently signed on, so now what I did is this button that I had at the end, I used this button to sign on and sign out. So since I'm currently signed in, I can click this button to sign out. And I set up another breakpoint here. This looks at the current state of the portal. Am I signed in and signed out? And then depending on my current state, it will perform the opposite action. So currently I'm signed in, and now it calls the sign out method to sign out. So if I continue here, you can see I'm not signed in anymore. And if I look up here, you can see, I'm not signed in. So it actually detected my API state when I logged the portal out, when I signed out, and it changed the user interface appropriately. In my sample, I don't have the code to listen these events to change my interface, but if I click on sign in, it will actually bring up the login, so I can actually log in with my identity and my password to sign back in. Okay, I just need to make sure I'm signed in because one of my following demos kind of relies on the state, so I'm going to leave it signed in. Okay, so don't need to save this. Let's go back to the slides. So another class used by the API is EsriHttpClient. It's modeled after the System.NET Web Request class from Microsoft, and it manages your security context on portal queries. It acquires and inserts the token into your REST call, so you don't need to worry about this. And the main class of, it's also the main class for ArcGIS Online communication with the help of EsriHttp request headers that encapsulates the HTTP header, and the HTTP response message that encapsulates the HTTP response. And then finally, we're also looking at JSON.NET. As I said earlier, that's a Microsoft class that you can install, I think through, is it a NuGet that you can use to install this? And this class we use to convert the JSON format that's returned by ArcGIS Online into classes. And there's probably many more libraries or whatever that you can use to process your return JSON format. Let's take a look at ArcGIS REST API. ArcGIS Online and Portal services can be consumed by using the ArcGIS REST API. And I have a link here that guides you to the definition. It's an open standard that you can actually look up. And good question, can I click on here? Yes, excellent. So we have the whole documentation we provided online. There we go. So if you want to perform any kind of requests, you would need to know the syntax, your request format and your response format. You would look it up on here. So if I look at some of these, I think we're using I'm not quite sure what we have, but anyways, you can look it up in here, and then you would see, oh, I need to specify this input URL. These are the parameters, and then here's example usage, and usually it shows you a response as well. Back to the slides. So here is an example usage of an HTTP request. This is a portal self request. So that gives me information about the portal. And then what is returned is a JSON response syntax. So this is the JSON format. It's an open standard, so you can look it up if you're not familiar with it. But it's a special syntax with curly brackets. Pretty much you have the name of the variable or the field, and then you have parameters after it. So, and we'll see it in a second, because when we step to the next example, we'll actually debug that a little bit. So as many of our samples, they are available as snippets or samples. And we have a set of pro snippets that we provide for these type of requests. So Portal self request, for example, is available as a pro snippet. So when you look at our help, and let me go to the internet real quick. If you're looking for ArcGIS Pro SDK help, just Google ArcGIS Pro SDK, and it will take you to our landing page. This is the landing page for the SDK here. And you can find that we have concepts, API reference, community samples, and snippets, everything available as a mouse click. So if we go, a good question is now, which section are the, I guess I could find a sample here, Portal. If I spell it right. Okay. Here we go. Here's a sharing snippet. Get the current active portal. Do we have the self request here too? Active portal. Get the signed on user. Here's an example for events. So if I click here, this would be code snippets that you can use and insert directly into your code. It's called Pro Snippets, and if you go to our landing page, use snippets, you can directly get there. It's a pretty good help for if you don't need a whole sample, instead just a short snippet. So here you see the snippet where we get the current connected user from ArcGIS Online. We build a URL, and the URL, this would be the path, the query path that you need to specify for a self request. So it would be sharing REST portal self. And then we specify the format, it's always JSON. You create a new instance of EsriHttpClient, and then you pass into the get method of EsriHttpClient your URL. And then we await the response that comes back from our response message class. You specify, give me the content, and then we read it asynchronously. Since this read is done asynchronously, we need to await until the asynchronous read is done. If you're not familiar with the async and await patterns, we explained that a little bit also in our first session that we had, the advanced user interface session for ArcGIS Pro. That's where I kind of explain how you would utilize async and await. But in this case, we have to await this asynchronous operation to make sure we have the data returned completely. Then we use this JSON.NET class. It has a JObject class, and we parse the return string. And it returns a new class that's a standard.NET class. Is called dynamic. And this allows us to easily parse the returned information. So in this case, you can see I have a dynamic class called Portal Self. I can now check the members. So there has to be an attribute in the return JSON that's called user. I'm going to check it for null here, just in case, because if it returns null, that means I had an anonymous request. Otherwise, I will always have a user member of Portal Self, And then the user itself, the user class itself, has a username. So I can retrieve that information. Now I have the username from the self request. So next we're going to take a look at how to search the portal for web maps. Again, there's a pro snippet available for this. And when you get web maps from ArcGIS Online, again, you use the Portal Manager and then EsriHttpClient, the same pattern. So first we construct our URL. In this case, the path would be sharing REST search. And that's something, again, that you can find in the standard documentation that we provide for the REST API for ArcGIS Online. And in this case, I specify my query. So I say query for type web map, type Explorer map, or type online map. So that would be my query. And here also you see I also specify the owner. So in this case, it will only give me web maps where the owner is the specified username. Then again, I perform the EsriHttpClient get method that returns my response. I await the content of my response, which will be the JSON string. I parse it with JObjects. I use the dynamic class to give me access to the members. And in this case, I look for the total items. So my result items, in this case, there's a total member. And if I look at the value for that, it gives me a long number of all the returned items. And actually, we do this in our next demo, just in a minute. So now if I have a result from the portal, for example, a web map, I have to use the item factory API class to actually create a web map item from the data that's returned from ArcGIS Online. And using the map factory API class, I then can create an actual web map. So here's the code snippet for that. So again, we have our result items that we have from our previous slide. The result items contain the total number, which we already looked at. If the total number is greater than 0, then our results actually contain a list of web map items. So in this case, I take the result items.result and I add them to a dynamic list of result item lists. So I just do that by add range. And now I can use it as a collection. So the first item of that collection, that's the one I'm looking at here. So I get my first web map that's returned. In this case, it's the array 0 index here. And now I have an item that has an ID. Each web map has an ID. And I use the item factory with that item ID and a type of item factory item type portal item to create a web map item. So now I have a web map item that's created in ArcGIS Pro. I now have to ask the map factory if it can do something with that web map item. So that's the next request. Just say, can I create a map from this? And I give it the web map item. And if that's true, then I actually can physically create the map within ArcGIS Pro, and I can add it to my Pro panes. So my map panes that I have, I create a new map pane asynchronously, and I pass in this new map. So let's do this demo here. Okay, here we go. So this is a little bit different. For this sample, I used a gallery item. And if you're not familiar with a gallery item, it appears on the ArcGIS Pro ribbon on the top, but it's a gallery of pictures, thumbnails, and text. We showed you also, I think also in our very first or in the second session, we showed you how to create gallery items from scratch. So Let's just get right into it. I'm going to build this, I'm going to run it, and then we'll take a look at some of the code. Okay, the rebuild is quite slow, but finally, here we go. Let's debug it. And also, if you use the SDK, the Pro SDK, when you use our templates out of box, you will be able to run the debugger. There's nothing you have to kind of custom configure or do anything special about. Everything will be ready to be debugged out of box. So in this case, I added a new item here. It's under my tab. Yeah, I can't see the screen now anymore. It's in the background. Here we go. So there's a new tab, ArcGIS Online Integration. As soon as I clicked on the tab, the system wants to initialize my gallery item. And what I want to do in this gallery item, I want to query ArcGIS Online for a bunch of web maps. So this is what happens here. This is the initialization code that's called for my gallery items. And I use this call get web maps asynchronously to return all the web maps that fulfill my query conditions. So let's step into this. I think hopefully I set a breakpoint because this is asynchronous. Yes, I did set a breakpoint. So here again is the asynchronous patterns that we use, await and async, because I have to use the list of web map items that are returned. I have to await the result here. So I have to say this is an asynchronous method. So that means that happens in the background. I don't want to lock up my user interface. So I want to return immediately from my initialization code. I want to return immediately. So this happens later. So once I return back, the user interface is responsive, and then the compiler does it in a way so this will execute at a later point and then populate my data. So I'm going to continue here. And here's the code that's now called asynchronously. So my user interface initialization is done. It returned back to my user interface. It's responsive. However, asynchronously in the background, my code is now ready to run. So what it does first is I get the active portal. I check for some error conditions. I don't have any error conditions. Now I'm going to use the URL builder to configure it with a portal URI. That's my portal URL. And then I specify a path for that, which means go to sharing, rest, and search. So that's the path to perform a search. Then I create my HTTP client. And here's where I perform my query. It's very straightforward. All I say is give me any kind of web map. So here's my query string. I'm not sure if you can see that. There's a little bit, the IntelliSense is a little bit small, but the string itself says, give me type web map, and then the return format is JSON. So now, as we saw in the slides, I execute the get method. So here it uses my header, my URL path to execute the query. Here's my search response. However, search response, I have to await the result. And then parse the result. And when we look at this dynamic class here, we can see that it has a set of properties that I can access. It has, for example, a count 6, it has values, and etc. So I can directly use the result item. So what I do here is I say, give me the total, give me the value of the total property. So if I leave this big here, let me step over this. So the number of total web maps that I was returned is pretty big, something like 1.5 million. However, in one batch, it only returns about, I think, 6 or whatever I set up as the maximum number of web maps returned to me. So we'll see in a second how many those are. So once I have this result, I can actually physically look at my results because I know I have more than 0. So what I do here is I take these results, just as I showed you in the code before, and I put it into a list of dynamic classes here. And when we look at the count is 10. So with each request, if you look at that, that's a parameter you can configure. It's an optional parameter. The default is 10. So if you do a query request and you don't specify the number of maximum return results, it will be 10. So we receive 10. So as we step through here, we go through each one of these result items. And what we have for these is an ID, which is a GUID, as you can see here. We have a title. We have here imagery. We have a name, which is the name of the specific imagery. We have a little snippet here, and we have the thumbnail, which is a URL to the picture. So from this, I add this as my own list of web map items, and that's what I display in my gallery on the user interface. So let's continue this. And you can see up here, this is my gallery. Here's my 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 results. And what I display in my gallery is the thumbnail that I returned back from my web map search. And then we also display looks like the title. So the first one is imagery, streets, imagery with label, etc. So now I can select one of these in my gallery. So if I click on OpenStreetMap, I hit another breakpoint here. And this is where actually I have currently selected a specific web map item. So when we look at it, we can see it's the OpenStreetMap item. I take this item using the item factory with its ID, which is the GUID that we stored earlier. Here's the GUID. And we have a type of item factory item type portal item. Now we can create a web map item from this. So I did this. So my current item here, this is actually a type of web map item. And then I asked the map factory class in the API, can you create a map from this? I pass it in the current item, and it can, so it returns true. And now I can actually create my web map from this. So let's run this, and here's the map. And this is OpenStreetMap, so I should be able to zoom in, and it is OpenStreetMap. So this is the web map. So this sample and many more are available on our community sample website, where you can learn how to use these classes. Let's go back to the slides. Let me close this. And I just want to show one more sample before I hand it off to Tushar. And this also is a sample that's available on ArcGIS Online, not ArcGIS Online, on our community samples website. So again, from the landing page, you can get to our community samples. And if you drill down, you see under framework, we have a sample that's called config with start wizard. What this is a configuration. You've seen a sample of this in the plenary. It allows you to customize the startup screen. So we actually have a sample where we show you how to customize the startup screen. In this case, we allow you to see a wizard, and you can select from various startup options. So let me go to my project, config with startup wizard. And again, let me rebuild this. Let me start the debugger. Since this is a configuration, you don't see the standard ArcGIS Pro startup screen. Instead, this is our custom startup screen. And now we have the startup screen here. It's a wizard, so you can see on the bottom right, there's little wizard buttons here. And I can use this wizard button to scroll through my different options. Now, one of the options here, you can see there's a breakpoint. Again, I utilize EsriHttpClient, and I perform a query. And as you can see here, it's a sharing REST search, and it looks for project packages. So let me undo this breakpoint here, and let's continue. It's the same code sequence you saw in my previous example. And the return is I fill this list here, again with thumbnails and additional information that I have. And now I can utilize our ArcGIS Portal interface classes to connect to Portal before I even start Pro. So in this case, I can select from projects, I can select from templates, I can select from web maps, and I think there's one more option. Yeah, these are layers. So I can actually select from any type of data that's available on ArcGIS Online directly from my startup screen. So in this case, let me just start with images. And the code sequence that's being executed in the background is the same that you saw before. So again, I use the ID that I have from the portal item. I use the item factory, create the web map item, and then I ask whether I can actually create the map and then finally create it. So let's continue. And you can see ArcGIS Pro will create it automatically. And here we go. So these samples are all available online. If you look at our community samples, you can play with the samples yourself. We also provide you a data set you can download. Just follow the instructions, put it in the right locations. And then each sample has instructions that will guide you through the steps on how to run the sample. Okay, and now we will switch to Tushar, and he's going to show us a little bit more in-depth information about EsriHttpClient.
Okay, so I'm going to go over the slides a little bit quickly because and just focus on the main things that Wolf did not mention. So what EsriHttpClient can do, basically, from the demos that Wolf showed, you can use this class to make REST requests to ArcGIS Online and ArcGIS Portal. So what that means is it gives you opportunity as users to write add-ins for features which we have not exposed in ArcGIS Pro. It is also useful for uploading and downloading resources from the server, and in the next slide I will talk more about why it's beneficial to use this class to upload or download resources. And EsriHttpClient can work with any portal and not just your active portal. In the demos that Wolf was showing, he was working against the active portal, but you could have a bunch of portals in your list, and you might want to work with any other portal and not just the active portal, and it will just work fine. The first parameter that it takes is the URL, and if you just pass it the correct URL, it will work against that portal. So why do we need our own HTTP library when Microsoft has provided the HttpClient library? One of the main factors that we had when we designed this class was we tried to keep the design as close to the Microsoft's design so that you don't have to learn a whole new design pattern in order to use this library. If you know how to use Microsoft's HttpClient, you will very easily use this class. And we needed this class is because we required all the requests going out from ArcGIS Pro. We wanted it to go through one common HTTP pipeline, and that gives us a couple of advantages. Like in this case, Wolf was using ArcGIS Online, but if you have your local portal, which let's say uses PKI authentication, then you might get prompts to punch in your PIN or select a certificate. And with this design, you will get prompted only once and not multiple times. So that's one of the biggest advantage that we get by making all the requests go through one HTTP channel. And also there are other advantages, like we take care of the proxy server support, the forward proxy, reverse proxies, proxy scripts, and the client and server authentication, certificate validation. So all that thing is handled for you out of the box when you use this EsriHttpClient class. It also gives you more low-level control over the HTTP communication. You can actually update the HTTP request headers, you can view the response headers, and you can configure the timeout, things like that. So if you are making a REST request and you say that if the server does not respond within like 10 seconds, you want it to fail, you can specify that timeout value here. So it's like we give you all the pieces. It's like how much deep you want control over that, you can just do everything with it. So one of the biggest advantage of using EsriHttpClient is the token lifetime management for you. Whenever you make REST requests, if they are private, then you need to be authorized and append a token to the request. So we do that behind the scenes for you. You don't have to take care of the token lifetime management. The tokens, they do expire, so we will renew the tokens for you if they expire. And what's pretty cool feature is, let's say you are downloading or uploading some large resource and the token expires in between of that downloading or uploading request, then we will renew the token on the fly and make the download or upload request succeed. So that's one of the big advantage of using EsriHttpClient. And also the upload file size limit. I think with browsers you have a limit on how big files you can upload. I think it's 2 gigabytes in size, but in here when you upload a file to online, we check if the file size is too big. We cut those big file into small chunks and then we upload those small chunks for you. So we make we get around the upload file size limit as well. So like Wolf has showed you, there are 3 main classes: the EsriHttpClient, the request headers, and the response headers. These are the lowest level of classes that you can work with, but not all people want to go that level. They don't want to deal with the HTTP headers or the response. And so we have started building new classes on top of these classes, like the ArcGISPortalManager or the ArcGISPortal class, and we are going to continue to invest further on expanding those classes and introduce new classes. So the key takeaway point is, if you need to have pretty low level control, you can use EsriHttpClient and the request header response message. But if you want something that's already there, just use ArcGISPortal class, like to get the signed on username. We provide those helper functions for you, so you don't have to deal with the low level stuff. So what Wolf's demo showed you was how ArcGIS Pro works with ArcGIS Online, and the same is true for ArcGISPortal as well. But I wanted to demonstrate the strength of this API, so I wrote an add-in to show that this class will work not just with ArcGIS Online or ArcGISPortal, but it will work with any third-party servers like Google server or any server that you take. So are you guys aware of Uber, what Uber does? Have you guys used Uber? So what I tried to do here was I wrote an Uber add-in for Pro. With this add-in, what you can do is you can book your Uber ride with ArcGIS Pro. And let me first demonstrate the add-in to you, and then we can go and look at the code at how I did that. So let me just start Pro. So one thing was, there are a couple of bugs in our SDK that we are showing you. So I had to patch 1.4 with these bugs. So this add-in won't work as is if I upload this add-in on GitHub and you download it. So, but I'll make sure that we fix that for the 2.0 release or next release, and then you can pretty much, this add-in would work there. So I have a project called Uber. So it just displays a default base map. And as you can see here, besides the share button on the ribbon, I have got an Uber button. And I just downloaded their icon from online, Googled it, and book Uber ride. So when you click that, you get this dock pane. You need to be signed in order to book your Uber ride. And all the code that I'm showing you right now is made, the REST calls are made using EsriHttpClient class. So when I click on sign in, it will launch the Uber sign-in dialog, the OAuth sign-in dialog in our window. So if you know about the OAuth 2.0 specification, which ArcGIS Online uses as well, we make a request to the Uber server and they send us back the HTML page which we host in this WPF window. So I can sign in. And in order to do this, I had to register ArcGIS Pro application on Uber's developer console. So I had to do that so that we get a client ID. So let me just put my password. I don't know why it started prompting me for this two-factor authentication, but it did not at home or even in my office. So maybe it does not like the network over here. 0597, okay. So when I signed in, I made another REST request to the Uber server and it gave me back the username with which I was signed in. So in this case, it's my name, first name and last name. Just to show you, I'll open up Fiddler. Fiddler is a tool which we use a lot. It's used for sniffing the HTTP traffic that goes on between the client and the server. So I can set the source location, click on the map, and as you can see, I'm recording the latitude, longitude for the location that I clicked, and I can also click on the destination location. Now, when I clicked on the source location, the Uber provides different kinds of products like Uber XL, Uber SUV, depending on which location you clicked. So if I had clicked on like San Francisco airport, I think they offer a lot more products there as opposed to here. I think this is the Palm Springs Convention Center location that I'm zoomed into. So this list I have obtained on the fly depending on the source location. And when I click Uber X, I make another request and it gives me back the current estimate of how much it would cost me to go from this source location to destination location. I can, if I change this to Uber SUV, the estimate changes to $25. And if you see behind in the Fiddler, this is the actual calls that we are making. And if you see, the calls that I'm making are to a sandboxed API. So because the account with which I signed in to this Uber account has got my credit card, I didn't want the actual Uber riders to come here. So they provide a sandboxed API where I can play with their API and not make an actual call. So after I make that request, I can click on book Uber ride, and then it actually makes an Uber ride for me, orders an Uber ride. After I click OK, I have to make sure that I cancel this Uber ride, because next time if I just clicked OK and it did not cancel the Uber ride, I cannot book another Uber ride because it gives an error that you're already on a ride and you cannot book another ride. So that's the add-in that I wrote. we can expand this add-in even more. This is the fiddler. It's prompting for certificate error, but we can ignore that. So like we could have easily made another REST request and got the current location of all the Uber drivers that are around the source location, and then symbolized it with a car and showed that. Let's take a look at the code. So here, if we see, this is when I clicked on the sign in button, this is what the code that's called is the do sign in. The function method, and what I do here is I provide the API, the URL to the Uber server, and this is the client ID which I got when I registered ArcGIS Pro application on the Uber developer console. It gives back a HTML page which we show in our own WPF dialog that's done by the show dialog thing. And afterwards I am using again EsriHttpClient class, which makes, so this is like the internal guts of how OAuth works. You can read it up if you want, and then ultimately what it gives back is an access token which we store in order to make those subsequent REST requests. And it also gives back a refresh token. Like I said, in ArcGIS Online, the tokens do tend to expire, and then we can use the refresh token to get a new access token. But in this case, I did not store that, but we could have done that. The book Uber ride, before that, let's take a look at the get rides button. So like I said, depending on the start location, I'm getting the coordinates of the location that you clicked on the map as the start location. And then I make a REST request to the sandboxed Uber API, and I pass those coordinates, and then I get back an array of the products, the Uber XL or SUV or vehicle assisted rides and different kinds of rides. And then I just add them to a list which is data bound, which is WPF. If you know a little bit of WPF, you can bind the UI elements to this list, and that list gets displayed there. The update estimate, whenever I change the ride in this drop down, I have to change the estimate, and this thing, the update estimate method, does that. And what we do here again is we take the start location and the destination location, we get the product ID of the selected product, and then we make a REST request again using EsriHttpClient class, and then we get back the fare and we display it. In order to book an Uber ride, I think I had it up here. Do book ride. So what we do here is, again, we take the start location, the start latitude, longitude, the end lat longs, the product ID is the kind of Uber ride that you wanted to book, the fare ID, and then you just pass those information, you make another REST call. And as you can see, sometimes in here I wanted to make a post request. So by default in HTTP you can put like get, put, post, delete. There are certain kinds of things that you can do. In this case, I wanted to make a post request, but when I saw the Uber developer API, their thing mentioned that the request, the payload that I am passing to the post request has to be a JSON, and in order to do that I have to specify the JSON in the HTTP content header. So I just easily did that with the help of HTTP client here. I specified the encoding as UTF-8, and I passed the header as application JSON, and then I'm displaying messages of whether you have successfully booked your Uber ride or not. And this is the delete request that I was talking about. Once I make a ride request, I have to make sure that I delete it. So that's again another HTTP client delete method that I am calling. So with this, you can see that the class is pretty powerful. you can use it with other things as well. I think we are getting close. We have these are just the few sessions that we recommend in order, if you want to learn more about ArcGIS Pro SDK, you can attend these sessions. And with that, I'll leave for any questions that you may have. Yeah.
So I had a question, specifically with distributing apps on or add-ins on the marketplace. I was wondering if you guys were going to, or if it was possible to support like license provisioning for add-ins. So like being able to see who's using the software or the add-in and determine whether or not they are licensed for it or not.
I think we're in luck. You can actually take that offline with Chris right here.
Actually,
Chris Sent.
I can enhance that question. So Camille and I were talking earlier today about this one. So it's a really interesting idea, but being able to, within Pro, in ArcGIS Online, to see if your add-in has been provisioned in ArcGIS Online and potentially use that almost as like a licensing type mechanism to see if you've got the add-in up in ArcGIS Online as one of your items in your organization, and then determine if it is, based on the user role perhaps, be able to determine if that's actually something you can run and use that with the iExtension config interface to, again, enable that add-in.
So you want to expand how we did licensing for ArcGIS Pro, and you wanted to do something similar for.
So sorry, to get the question really simple. So can you go to ArcGIS Online and actually determine if that add-in has been accessible or not?
No. You cannot do it out of box, but you could conceivably come up with a scheme, or you let your add-in talk to ArcGIS Online and query for some secret that's hidden in ArcGIS Online somewhere to determine whether it's licensed or not. Was that the question? Yeah, you probably could do that, but that's not something that we support out of box. There is a sample that we provide on our community samples that deals with licensing for add-ins, but it's only to provide license information in the backstage as a standard add-in to the existing license information. But the algorithm that you use behind the scenes to determine the yes or no whether this user is authorized, that development is left to you. So yeah, but you could do this, but it would be some secret URL that you check for. I don't know how you would do it. So if you have it, if you figure out a way how to do it, then you can go to the community sites and add that sample.
I have some ideas here.
Yes.
Yeah, because what happens with pro licensing is a lot of other things happen behind the scenes. What you are presented is with just a simple view, but we have to take care of a lot of things like where are the actual licenses stored, and what certificate do you use to encrypt it, what if it's stolen. A lot of things go behind the scenes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any more questions? Yes, sir.
Question about the Uber app. Did you already post that? You said that that the library that it was using, it has a bug in it, and so if we tried to use it, it would work. But in the future, will you be posting this?
Yeah, I can put this up on the GitHub and post a URL, and then you can download and use it.
Yeah, we actually had a similar demo we showed last year at the Developer Summit, and I think it was some type of upload, and we had to wait one patch until it actually worked, but we just uploaded it. You know, it's available. And then we had, at the user conference, we had the ability to download vector tiles through our API, and that didn't work in that version, but with the next patch that was available too. So yeah, we will fix it and then post it. Yeah, because it's a cool sample, right? It's something, you know, this world now, all services are pretty much REST based. They're all very similar. And just to know that you have this library that gives you all this security token management, and you know, you don't need to worry about that, that's actually a great thing, right? And if you have a sample how to do the authorization and pop up the screen and you know whatever else is necessary, I think that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, but one thing I want to make clear is I was using a third-party Uber server to log in, so the token management, EsriHttpClient won't do that for you. We do that only for ArcGIS Online or Portal. And so just to be clear, there's no confusion with that.
Yeah, but at least you see the code snippet on how to insert your token. So there we go.
Yeah. Yeah.
So our application is pretty much integrated into the fact that and then dynamically configures the app based on whether you like electrical group or gas group. So when they manage that at our clients in the portal, and this might be a question for you actually, one of the real good features we would like to do is to be able to designate, we do it in groups. So like we put a bunch of users in a group, and then we have a configuration file that we have. This is the basically the pattern ID for work for our app. We upload a configuration file as like a code file, zipped up, and when we share that to a specific group, and we add users in, so then when we log in, we detect based on the name and convention of the group on the file what your file is, download, we can press it, we can dynamically reconfigure our app with the tools, all the layers that are available. Is there a way to set a default group? Because aside from putting like another flag in the name of our group, we'd like to be able to have, because what happens with the client is sometimes the administrator puts somebody in two groups, and then so therefore they get an error because we don't know which group is the right group to use in order to load their config file. A nice little feature, I don't know, this is on the back end, this has nothing to do with the runtime, would be to either be able to set a default group or have an admin setting so that you can only do one group. So if I move somebody from a group, you can copy it, because they may not stay all the time with the client. We gotta fix that. Aside from coming up with our own solution to designate. Are you guys familiar with the groups?
What did you use to upload the zip file? Did you use ArcGIS Online user interface?
Well, some of our clients, like for instance, San Diego Gas and Electric, they have their own REST portal.
Yeah.
You want that to happen automatically, right? So by
Or either automatically, or just like say like, add like, you know, I can have a user in multiple groups, but this one's the default for our app, so that when they walk in, we know that's the group we want to use, share file.
There's no such thing as default group in ArcGIS Online setting, but you can write your own add-in to do that for you. Yes.
Because I'm more of a front-end client,
Oh.
I obviously use it back-end because
Because when we share maps to online or portal, we specify in a drop-down, we let the user choose what group the map should be shared with. So in your case, you already know what group you want to share it with, and you can just write an add-in for Pro, and then you can upload the zip file using Pro, and then specify the group in the code.
That's cool. Now, is that only for the Pro, or can that use it for a web app? Because everything's managed through web. We don't use Pro. That's only used for building.
Right. Well, what I was saying was you can write an add-in for Pro in order to upload that zip file and specify a default group. But once the zip file is uploaded to online, it's pretty much on the web. You can use browser to that. That's a workaround. but I don't think there is a default. And yeah,
It was mainly just the recommendation, honestly.
right.
That's an edge case, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Thanks.
yeah.
All right, thank you for joining us tonight, and enjoy the show.
Thank you.